Okay, so today we will start with the accounts payable. I just open my. This is the BR100 document for the accounts payable. So before I get into accounts payable, we'll talk about the background. Let me open my running notes. Okay, so in any organization, I think there are two activities. One is purchasing, and other one is selling. So whatever you purchase, for which you need to make a payment. Similarly, whatever you sell, for which you need to get a receipt from the customer. So, from whom do we generally purchase the goods? It's a question like from whom?
Supplier.
From the supplier, yeah. So, the main three activity, I mean, the main activities in AP module is purchasing and make a payment for those purchases, and the purchasing happens from the suppliers. And from a selling perspective, the main activity is selling and then getting a receipt, and it will be from customers. So this is handled under AR module, accounts receivable, and this is handled under AP module, accounts payable. So now we'll start with the accounts payable module, keeping this in the background. So the main activities like creating of the invoices, making a payment, creating of the suppliers. So at a high level, these are the three activities, main activities involved in the accounts payable. So the first thing is, let me open our org structure. Okay, so as far as this arc structure is concerned, we have got two operating units, Reliance Postpaid and Reliance Prepaid, under Reliance Communication legal entity, and this legal entity falls under Reliance INR ledger. As you know, subledgers are maintained at the operating unit level. So we will try to follow creating of the, I mean, follow the AP module for Reliance Postpaid operating unit. So all our setups will be under Reliance Postpaid operating unit. So this will be for Reliance INR ledger. This is for AP. And as far as AR is concerned, what we will do is we will try to follow maybe USD ledger, or within the INR ledger, maybe we'll use some other legal entity or the operating unit, so that whenever we are using AGIS, Advanced Global Intercompany System, it will be useful for us, because when you use your Advanced Global Intercompany System, it's a transaction between different legal entities. So either it should be between this and this, or this and this, something like that. Okay. So now, as far as AP is concerned, we will try to create all the setups under Reliance Postpaid operating unit. Okay, so the first setup involved before we proceed with the subledgers is running a program called replicate seed data. We need to run this program, replicate seed data, for each of the operating units. So in this case, we need to run the replicate seed data for Reliance Postpaid, Reliance Prepaid, Reliance Cotton Extraction, Reliance Clothes Manufacturing, and if there are any operating units under these legal entities, we should run this program. So what is the significance of this replicate seed data program? So this is the first activity before we proceed with the subledgers. So as the name itself says, it is replicating the seeded data. So Oracle provided seeded data, something like Oracle provided payment terms, invoice types, lookups, and all those things. It is replicating for each operating unit. So before we proceed with the corresponding subledger setup, we need to run this particular program. And as far as the this training session is concerned, I had already ran the replicate seed data for all four operating units. I ran it for Reliance Postpaid, Reliance Prepaid, Reliance Cotton Extraction, and Reliance Clothes Manufacturing. I can show you from where you can run the program. So generally it is run from the system administrator responsibility. In a normal implementation uh, uh, implementation client, if you do not have access to the system administrator responsibility, then we need to ask the corresponding system administrator to run this particular program. So in our current client, recently we have gone with the rollout of a couple of operating units, so we do not have access to run this particular program in our production. So we ask the system administrator to run the program. So you need to go to view, request, submit new request, replicate seed data, and you need to pick up your operating unit. So Reliance cotton extraction, Reliance clothes manufacturing, Reliance postpaid, and Reliance prepaid. So I already ran for all these four. So it is suggested to run only once. Do not run it multiple times. So as I had already ran this particular program, now we will proceed with the next step.
Arvind, and this is for all the subledgers, or it's one for each subledger?
It's once per operating unit. So you need not run it for AP and AR or something like that. So before we proceed, that's the reason why I said before we proceed with the subledger setup, whether you proceed with AR or AP, you need to run this only once. So now, as I had already ran for these four operating units, now we can proceed with the AP and AR. Now we are starting today. We are starting with the AP, and after a couple of days we start with AR. We need not again run this particular program because it is running of the program per operating unit, not per module. Okay.
Okay. And what will happen if it is run twice?
Ideally it is not suggested, so I'm not sure like what will happen. Ideally it is not suggested because like run the replicate C data program and then start using the your complete your setups and start using that particular operating unit. Oracle suggested do not try to run once again. It's only once before you start using that particular operating unit. I never tried running of rerunning the that particular program second time after we started using the uh, that particular module or operating unit.
Okay.
I don't think so. It is going to create any harm. I mean, as long as there are no customization, and if there are any customizations, I'm not sure like what your replicate C data program is going to impact your customization. But my guess would be yes. Even if you run second time, there should not be any issues. But it's suggested to run only once.
Okay. Okay.
So that's the first step. Running up the replicate C data. And the second step is obviously you need to create the corresponding AP responsibilities. So if you remember, like for as far as the GL is concerned, the naming convention is General Ledger Super User, INR Ledger, General Ledger Super User, USD Ledger. So as the data at the General Ledger is stored at the ledger level, the naming convention is module name, and then the role is super user, and then the ledger name. So yeah, general ledger, super user, Reliance INR. So similarly for AP, payables, super user, and operating unit name. Generally, we need to go for the operating unit name because you will have one responsibility per operating unit in the subledger. So as far as this is concerned, so here it will be something like payables, super user, Reliance postpaid, comma INR, so that it will also looking at the responsibility naming convention, it will also tell us like what exactly is the functional currency or what exactly is the ledger to which that particular operating unit belongs to. Again, it's only just a naming convention. You can even put ABC also. So now we'll go with the naming convention of payables, super user, Reliance postpaid, comma INR. So payables, super user, Reliance postpaid INR, postpaid INR. Okay, so now we will try to create this responsibility. go to system administrator, security, responsibility, define. So this is my responsibility name, and application is payables, and responsibility key is just any unique key, payables, Reliance, postpaid, and already in use. Oh, did I create the looks like I think I had created the responsibility. Yeah, I think I had created the responsibility. So I'll just rename it to payable super user Reliance postpaid INR. And this is the responsibility key. Data group is always standard, and this is the menu. Like, how do I know which menu to be used? So I just copied the menu which is available under payables vision operations. Yeah, under payables vision operation, this is the menu. So even in any our implementation projects also, we just use the same menu which is available for the what do you call the vision operations. Okay, so once the responsibility is created, the next step is add that responsibility to your user id, which I had already done. I had added that particular responsibility to my user id, and the next step is assigning of the profile options to the responsibility. So go to this profile option, so which is profile system, and try to assign the main profile options to your responsibility. So what is our responsibility? Payables super user Reliance. So the first profile option is GL data access set. So can you tell me what should be the value of this GL data access set?
Reliance INR ledger.
Exactly. So GL data access set is nothing but your ledger which needs to be linked to this particular operating responsibility. So GL data access set should be Reliance INR ledger. And the next profile option is MO operating unit. So MO operating unit is the operating unit which you need to link to this particular responsibility. So what should be my MO operating unit based on this chart?
Communications, Reliance Communications.
Operating unit.
Postpaid. Reliance postpaid.
Postpaid, okay.
Reliance postpaid is the operating unit. So MO operating unit should be Reliance postpaid. That is my operating unit. So as far as the subledgers are concerned, you need to associate the legal entity and operating unit. Somewhere in the operating unit definition, you have already linked this legal entity to this operating unit. I mean, we have even given this ledger name also. So it's now not mandatorily, or like there is nothing like wherein there is no profile option to specifically associate this legal entity to the operating unit. If you remember, we have created this operating unit during the ledger setup. So if you in a traditional 11 items, if you want to create an operating unit, you need to go to the inventory responsibility and go to the setup organization screen and create the operating unit. But in R12, there are two ways. You can directly go to the traditional organization form to create the operating unit, or you can create the operating unit while defining the ledger. So we have already done the step of creating of the operating unit during the ledger setup. So that is the reason why I did not show again that particular step. But otherwise, the first step is creation of the operating unit, then run replicate seed data, then create responsibilities, and then assign profile options. Okay, I can, if you do not remember, I can also show you that particular screen through which we have created the operating unit. General ledger vision, general ledger supervisor Reliance INR. Go to accounting setup manager. So our ledger name is INR Reliance INR ledger. Okay. Hope I'm recording this. Yeah. Operating units. So this is where we have created the operating units. We clicked on add operating unit and created this operating unit. So there is a button called open organization form. So if you click on open organization form, it will take you to the traditional organization form wherein you can create the operating unit. So let us click on this open organization form. Okay. Oracle Human Resources could not retrieve a value for this user type profile option. Please ensure it is set properly for your responsibility. Okay. So there is a profile option, something called HR user type is a profile option which we need to assign to this particular responsibility. So now let us try to assign that profile option. So in order to access the organization form from a general ledger responsibility, looks like we need to assign a profile option, HR user type. It is not mandatory, but if you want to access that organization form from here, you need to assign that. Otherwise, it's not mandatory. Okay. So it is opening the traditional organization form. So here you can query for your operating unit, which we have already created. Okay. And here you can see. So when we are creating operating unit here, we were creating operating unit under the ledger, and here we have even given the default legal context, which is nothing but the legal entity name. So legal entity name is already associated with the operating unit, and also the ledger name is also associated. So this is how you can see the linkage of operating unit to the legal entity and ledger in this screen. But if you want to see the same linkage in the organization screen, operating unit, you can see here the primary ledger is Reliance INR ledger, and default legal context, which is nothing but the legal entity is Reliance Communications. So ledger is Reliance INR ledger and legal entity is Reliance Communications. Okay. So operating unit can be done through this traditional form, or that can be created directly from the ledger form. But whereas creation of the legal entity in earlier 11i version, legal entity is also created from this particular screen. But in R12, legal entity architecture is totally changed, so we should not be creating a legal entity from this particular screen. Our system will not even allow us to create a legal entity from here. So we need to create the legal entity from this screen. So click on legal entities and then create the legal entity, which is what we have done during our GL sessions. Okay. Okay, now going back to our profile options. So MO operating unit, we have assigned Reliance Postpaid and GL data access set is Reliance INR ledger. And there is a profile option called default country. Default country is India. I think this is assigned by me. Okay, so the reason why I'm assigning a default country as India is at a site level, default country is associated as United States. So we are associating a default country as in India, so that whenever there are certain screens, I think especially your supplier address screens or some other screens, the default country will be India based on this particular profile option. Otherwise, it will always say United States, and you need to click on the drop down and change it to India. But here our operating unit is created in India, and so our assumption is most of our suppliers will be located in India. Hence, we want the default country to be India. So if you want, once it is defaulted, you can change it to any other country. But just from a defaulting perspective, let's default to India. Again, this is an optional parameter profile option. So these two are the main two mandatory profile option, and all other three are optional profile option. And as far as the sequential numbering is concerned, I'm saying not use. So what is the significance of sequential numbering? So sequential numbering is auto generation of a system generated number for each of your invoice or payment. So if you want to use that particular sequential numbering, then you need to assign something called, you need to create something called document sequencing and assign the sequencing to the corresponding ledger and the corresponding categories. So we'll not get into that. So I'm using a value called not used. So I'll not be using the sequential numbering. And the last profile option is SLA additional data access set. Again, this particular profile option is optional, and this is applicable only if you are using the secondary ledger. So SLA additional data access set. As you can see here, Narendra, is that you? Anyway, somebody looks like joined.
Yes, Arvind, I'm Narendra. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I joined late.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah. Okay, so this SLA additional data. So here you can see already a profile option called GL data access set. This is to associate to your primary ledger, and SLA additional data access set is the secondary ledger which you need to assign. If you do not assign this particular profile option, then when you are running your create accounting, it may go into warning or error because if you remember, like I said that like whenever you are running a create accounting program from the subledger, in a single go it sends to both GL primary as well as the GL secondary. If you remember, as far as our real Reliance INR ledger is concerned, we have created a secondary ledger. Okay, so hence you need to associate that profile option of SL additional data access it and give your secondary ledger name Reliance INR secondary ledger, so that when you run your create accounting from this particular responsibility, data goes to both your GL primary and GL secondary. If you do not assign this, it may throw an error message saying that you do not have access to send the data to your corresponding GL secondary. SLA additional data access it, and this is my profile option. So yeah, this is my secondary ledger name. It looks like I already assigned Reliance INR secondary. Okay, so these are the 5 important profile options which you need to assign at the responsibility level. There are a lot of other system defaulted profile options which are already set at the site level. We do not get into those things. Okay, and then the next step is creation of the employees. Like, I mean, this is again not a mandatory step. If the employees want to create any expense reports,
Arvind, just a step back. Apart from these 5 profile options, the other profile options are set at the site level. Those are defaulted via the seeded replicate seed data program.
no. So that they are not replicated from replicate C data program, but the all other profile options, they are set at a site level. As you know, like in Oracle, the profile option, how the profile option works. The profile options first check if there is any value at the user level. Then system will take that into consideration. If there is no value at the seed level, user level, then it goes and check if there is a value at the responsibility level, application level, and site level. So for all those profile options which are set at a site level, there will not be any corresponding values at the application, user, or responsibility level. So that means whatever is there in the site level will come into picture for those responsibilities.
So you mean to say those profile options should have already set at the site level without link to those seeded replicate seed data program?
No, as far as the profile option is concerned, there is it's not linked to replicate seed data. So what I'm trying to say is, okay, I'll give an example of the sequential numbering. Okay, so here what I did, I said not used. Let us assume that I did not save that. I did not assign that. Okay, now for the payable super user, the sequential numbering profile option value will be partially used. The reason being, there is no value at the user level, there is no value at the application at the responsibility level. The only value which is available at the site level. So that means now system will assume that as far as this payable super user Reliance responsibility is concerned, my sequential numbering should be partially used. Got it?
Okay. Yeah, I got it.
Yeah. Okay, the next thing is creation of the employees. I mean, obviously, we need not do this particular step, but in general, in any organization, as soon as he joins the organization, he will be created as an employee in your Oracle HR module. And once the employee is created, the employees will be associated with your username in the system administrator responsibility, so that all the system generated notifications, everything will go to that particular user. So just for demonstration purpose, I'll just show you the user ID, the person name, employee, whatever I had created. Go to your user, US HRMS manager, people, enter and maintain. Okay, so you can click on new. Maybe we'll just try to create, say, Niranjan's user. Niranjan, what is your last name?
Indupuru, Indupuru.
Okay,
Yeah.
first name Niranjan. Okay, so most of the other fields are optional. Okay, so we'll not get into details of each and every field. So I'm just creating a user, Niranjan, and what else? Just
Assignment.
I think just give some birth date. Okay. Action create employment as an employee. Okay, and then try to save this. You must specify gender for a new employee. Yeah, where is that gender?
Just beside to the create employee.
Yeah, you're right. You have not entered a social security number for this employee, which is fine. This is only a note. Okay, or I can just give you some dummy social security number. Okay, so an employee is created, and if you want to associate a manager, you can go to this assignment and associate a manager or a supervisor. Okay, so maybe what I'll do is, so I'll give my name as the supervisor. Okay, so if whenever we are using a supervisor hierarchy, whether in the GL or AP or purchasing, so whatever the transactions which are entered by Niranjan will come to me as a, because like I am assigned as a manager, so it will come to me for approval. Okay, now an employee is created. We need to associate this particular employee to the user in the system administrator. So what is the Niranjan's user ID? Oh. Do you, Niranjan, what is your user ID? This one or this one? I think this one. So you need to put your cursor in the person and associate your. Yeah, save this. Sorry, update to user security only allowed for user in the info semantics which now environment. Oh, okay. Looks like there's a form personalization in place. So Niranjan, you need to log into the system, and you can associate your person name to your user ID. Only you can do that. I cannot do that. Okay.
Sure, got it. Yeah, okay.
I was able to do it for my user ID. I'll show you that. So I was able to do it for my user ID. So I had created my employee in the HRMS responsibility. I came here and associated the person name. So if you do not associate this particular person name to your user ID, then you will not be able to receive your email notification or any other system generated notification. So in order for system to generate a notification, a person needs to be definitely assigned to your user ID. So for all your users, I think you need to create your username, your employee name in the HRMS module, and then you need to associate that. Otherwise, when you are testing something like GL notifications or some other notifications in the API or other module, then you will not be able to see the notification. Okay. So in any organization, the first step is an employee will be created in the HRMS module and user ID will be created in the system administrator responsibility, and both are linked. Then he'll be assigned the appropriate responsibilities depending on his role.